This is getting silly now. So this is the OPPO Find X9 Ultra, and according to OPPO, it is your next camera, and it's being positioned as the biggest breakthrough in the history of OPPO imaging. It comes hot off the heels of the OPPO Find X9 Pro, which is a brilliant phone and one of the best camera phones I've ever used in my entire life, which means this has its work cut out, doesn't it? But they do look quite different, and for one very specific reason. Where do we go with this? I'm not the kind of reviewer to go into really deep dives into the specs and camera comparison. There's people out there who do that much better than me, but what I can do is give you a 45-year-old dad's take on what should be the best camera phone I've ever used. Let's get into it. Okay, the specs of the OPPO Find X9 Ultra. These specs for smartphones do feel a little bit like just kind of chewing through things that I've chewed through many, many times. So let's try and keep this very brief. It's powered by the Snapdragon 8 Elite Gen 5, which does have a bearing on this comparison, which I'll get onto later. 2 storage options, either 512 or 1 terabyte, and it's either 12 gig of RAM or 16 gig of RAM respectively, depending on which storage tier you go for. The display, 6.82 inches, LTPO AMOLED. It's got all the stuff you expect. High refresh rate, obviously, that comes as standard now. 3,600 nits of peak brightness, HDR, yada, yada, yada. The battery, what is it? 7,050 milliamp hours. It's made with silicon kryptonite, which is incredibly important. 100 watt, loads of stuff going on. Very, very fast charging, very big battery. In the world of multiple IP ratings, this is IP66, 68, and 69 water and dust resistance. I still don't understand that, but it does mean that you can get it wet. It's the first global launch of the Ultra. That sounded weird. It's the first global launch of the Ultra series for OPPO, so you can buy this in Europe. I don't have all of the countries and stuff to hand, but it's not just available in China, which the OPPO 8 Ultra was. This you can buy outside of China. That's very, very good news. The pricing, I don't have it to hand at the moment. This video is being filmed the week before the launch. Once we've got the full launch pricing, we'll let you know down below in the comments or the description, wherever. Let's talk about 2 things in particular. No, in fact, 3 things. Let's do it properly. Design, the camera system, and which one should you go for? Starting with the design and the colour. Now, I made a bit of an error here because we had the option to choose between the Tundra, which is the kind of dark, very Hasselblad-inspired version of this phone, and this, which is Canyon Orange. I went for Canyon Orange because orange. Everything in this business is basically orange, and the idea really is that looks really good on camera and in thumbnails and all that sort of stuff. So I get the clicks and all the stuff that comes with that as a YouTuber, and it is lovely. In person, it's fantastic, but I think the best one is the Tundra. It's got this incredible camera-like quality about it. It's got that red, I think it's reddish, shutter button on it, which is a lovely contrast between that rear side of that phone. It's just a beautiful thing. I have held it, I've had it in my hands, and OPPO, if one day I can swap this review unit for the Tundra version, that would be fantastic. But if you like orange, this looks great as well. It's a right old chonky phone, this. If you compare this to, for instance, actually, the OPPO Find X9 Pro, which is very traditionally kind of phone-like, this has this massive camera bump. This is the big differentiating factor on the Ultra. And it does stick out, as you can see there. It does make it a little bit top heavy, but not as much as some other phones that have these massive camera bumps. The other thing it does, it gives you this lovely kind of ridge for your forefinger. So you can, if you're feeling brave, you can hold it like that, and it just feels a bit more secure. But it looks like such a purposeful phone. Look at it. It really stands out. It looks different to the competition, and clearly there's something on this phone that means the most about this phone, if that makes sense. There's something sticking out and making itself known, which is the clear indication that this phone is all about the camera system. There's not much more to say about the design, really, apart from the fact that I really, really like it. And I just wish more smartphones went this kind of bold and in your face. It's not for everyone. I think a lot of people do just want the more regular phone shape that doesn't have a massive camera bump. But if you're all about the camera, ooh. Anyway, camera system. Let's just talk about it. It is the main event. The camera specs on this phone are insane to the point where I do need to reference them a bit just to illustrate how crazy they are. So we have a 200 megapixel main camera. It's the largest 200 megapixel sensor in a phone. It has an f1.5 aperture. It's 23 millimeters in terms of the focal length. It's got a 50 megapixel ultra wide, which is 14 millimeters. There's a 200 megapixel 3x telephoto, the largest telephoto sensor ever in a phone. f2.2 aperture, 70 millimeter, 50 centimeter minimum focus distance. And then we have a 50 megapixel 10 times telephoto, which has an f3.5 aperture and the industry first quintuple whatever prism reflection periscope with sensor shift stabilization. That is really important because we haven't had a 10 times optical zoom, to my knowledge, on a smartphone since the Samsung S something, we'll put it down here, because even Samsung have reverted back to a digital AI infused 10 times zoom, whereas OPPO have said, nah, we're going to give you a proper optical 10 times zoom. And boy, does it work. So we have a zoom range on the Find X9 Ultra, if I go into the camera system, that goes from 0.6 to 10. They're the standard zoom ranges that we get here, but it goes all the way up to 120x. Obviously, beyond 10, you are into digital zoom territory. But how do I explain how good this camera system is? It's tricky because I don't do anything beyond opening the camera app and just taking photos. I don't even change the megapixel setting. You know, I don't go from 12 to 200. I just use it out of the box. And I do that with all of the phones that I test. Now, I do appreciate that this phone is angled towards people who do more than that. But I think people are going to buy this who do the stuff that I do, the dad thing, taking it out of your pocket and taking photos of your kid and your dog and all the rest of it. And it does make a difference to have this kind of camera system for that because it's ultra reliable, if you excuse the pun. I get, maybe that's the reason they call it the Ultra. It just takes the best possible photo every single time, and having that 10 times optical zoom alongside the 3 times optical zoom is genuinely useful to a point where I can't stop using it. And if I compare that with other phones on the market that I've lots of the phones that I've tested, where that they might top out at maximum 5 times optical zoom, which is still very, very useful. I don't tend to go beyond that because it just feels too digital, too AI infused. It's just not great. Whereas with the Find X9 Ultra, you have a proper 10 times optical zoom, and the optical quality is beautiful. The image quality, the dynamic range, the Hasselblad influence, it gives it something. It just gives the camera system and the photos this thing produces something. It's hard to explain, but they always look good. And it was the same thing with the Find X9 Pro. It still is. I'll come on to the comparison between these two phones in a second, but there's just something about OPPO photography that is so good. And it does so much more. If you go into the Hasselblad Master mode, you get 9 film simulations, you get X-Pan mode for massive sweeping wide shots, you get a portrait mode that now goes up to 10 times, which is something you can't do on other phones. I didn't need any of that because just going into the camera app, it does have a camera button by the way, and just choosing the focal length and hitting the shutter button got me what I wanted every single time. It didn't really let me down. The only time, like any camera phone, where it did let me down occasionally was indoors in very low light when I was trying to take photos of my son and my dog, both of whom do not sit still. So it's a tough thing. They're tough objects to take photos of. I love them both dearly. Video, 4K, 60 frames per second, Dolby Vision on every single lens. It goes up to 4K, 120 frames per second in Dolby Vision. It can shoot 8K at 30 frames per second if you want to go down that route. It has OLOG 2 with ACES certification. It's got 3D LUT support with real-time previews and burn-in if you want to go down that route. Again, I just whipped this out and did some shots of a particular car that I was reviewing recently. Again, straight out of the box, 4K, 30 frames a second, nothing special, and it did a brilliant job. The only thing it did occasionally was when I was zooming in to say 3 or 10 times, it kind of locks on the subject, and if you're trying to get a bit of movement in the footage that you're capturing, that can be a little bit annoying, but that's a bit of a minor gripe, really. The camera system, guys, on this phone is the best smartphone camera system I've ever used. There's the 45-year-old dad review of the camera system. However, the problem this phone has is this. So which one is for you? Okay, X9 Pro versus X9 Ultra. I think it's actually quite straightforward. Firstly, that design, it could not be any more different. The X9 Ultra, you have to want that camera system because the trade-off is that it's heavier, it has this massive camera bump, and it's just a chunky phone. It's thicker as well. I quite like that personally, but if you don't like that, just get the X9 Pro because you're still getting the OPPO thing, the OPPO side of things in terms of the operating system and the design and quality and the camera system and the Hasselblad stuff. It's all still there, but it's in a much tighter package. If you really want the best possible camera on the market for you when it comes to smartphones, just get this. It's that simple. However, there are some other differences which might matter to certain people depending on the things that you're looking for. Here is a table of the key differences between the two. Picking a few things out, we have a different chip. So the X9 Ultra has the Snapdragon chip, whereas the X9 Pro has the MediaTek chip. I have it on very good authority from Ben at Lover of Tech. Go and check his channel out if you haven't seen it before. That the MediaTek chip does outperform the Snapdragon chip in certain instances with certain stuff. I don't know by how much that is. For regular users and people who are just using these for the camera system, that probably doesn't matter. But if you're into gaming and more intense stuff, bear that in mind. The display is slightly bigger on the Ultra as well, and the Ultra has a smaller battery, so it has a roughly a 500 milliamp hour deficiency, if we can call it that, versus the battery in here. Does that matter in real world testing? Well, I don't know because I don't do in-depth battery testing, but the battery in the Ultra is still bonkers, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. The key difference though, apart from all of that, is the camera system. And yes, the Pro is fantastic. It is one of the best Android cameras I've ever used, but the Ultra steps it up a gear in just the right places. So you get that 10 times optical zoom, you get much bigger sensors, which means it can deal with low light situations better. It's just, you've got the X9 Pro, which is stunning, and then you've got the X9 Ultra, this is for the camera system, which is just on another planet. And this brings me to my inevitable conclusion. Okay, so I've already said that this is the best camera system I've ever used on a smartphone. I can't keep saying that, but it is. That is my conclusion, really. I think my other conclusion is that the fact we finally can buy this outside of China is incredibly good news, because the stuff that OPPO is doing, I've been to OPPO, I've been to their headquarters in Shenzhen, and I've seen what they do in terms of research and development. Not all of it, obviously, but I've seen what they wanted to show me in terms of R&D and just the scale of the things they're doing, and the history of OPPO phones is fascinating, but the availability has always been a bit tricky if you're not in China. And now, well, hopefully it's not. I can't tell you exactly which countries you can buy this in, but it's much more widely available compared to the previous version, and that can only be a good thing. It's a great thing for competition. The fact that the camera system is so good should spur on other smartphone manufacturers to do similar things. Competition is brilliant for us. It's fantastic because it just makes better phones appear in the future, which is good news. If you're wondering, by the way, this is the OPPO Watch X3. A lot of people have been asking what this watch is, which I've been wearing for the last few videos. It's the brand new watch from OPPO. I probably won't review it fully on here, but it will appear on my website, markellisreviews.com. Go and check that out if you haven't done already. Make sure you hit subscribe, get involved in the comments. I will as well. And let me know what you think about this. Are you getting one?